I'm going to talk through today something I'm using AI for. If you're a heavy AI user, it may not be that interesting or compelling, but if you're learning it new or you're particularly unfamiliar with it, it might be interesting to learn that this is the kind of thing that's possible. We'll talk about it real quick. So I wanted to start with what problem was I trying to solve first. We're offering an AI development delivery services transformation where we help our clients understand how to use agentic coding and transform their SDLC around all of what's coming next. It's effectively a change management initiative, and change management is really, really messy. It's hard to keep track of things. You're managing relationships, you're managing business processes, whether it's somebody else's company. There's just a lot of moving pieces. Additionally, for someone like me who is engaged at clients, but also trying to sell other engagements and also doing other managerial things, and also going out and talking to potential customers, a lot of context switching, and that's, at least for me, pretty difficult. I think for most people, pretty difficult. And so in the middle of that messy change management, it's hard to keep track of where I was with different people at the client and what did we discuss on what day and what meetings are coming up and all that. I'm also thinking about how do we scale what that looks like beyond me doing it? How do we build a system that we can train another person, another person, and another person to run in a similar fashion? And then as we do that, how do we make sure that all of the people that are delivering that kind of a service are cataloging their knowledge in one place, and we're able to sort of build our own institutional tacit knowledge in one place, so it's not just all in the heads of the individuals who happen to be staff at client A or client B. So I have all this in my head as I'm thinking about how to solve for this problem. And to talk you a little bit through what I built, and we're going to focus on the last one here the rest of the way. The core of the solution is an interactive knowledge base built of markdown files. That's a concept that's increasingly popular, but this idea that you are using markdown files that get checked into GitHub as sort of your wiki, and using a Claude or a Codex or some AI agent to interact with and work through that content is an emerging pattern in a lot of different industries. And so that's kind of the core of it. It's a bunch of basically just text files that are very readable by AI. I use it to apply my choice of management frameworks that I am kind of guiding the change management with under the hood. We also have in this an approach for source control that considers that there's some data that's sensitive. So I am talking to Claude about people at the client. I am sometimes using it in a way to vent myself, not really vent, but like talk to it frankly about what's happening. So it can talk me out of me being, reacting emotionally to a meeting and ground me back in the framework that we're talking through and reorient me back to progress and all the things that are important. But that also means that it's potentially sensitive information that gets put into there in terms of like what I said about a person. And so there's actually a source control setup where it'll keep that in a private place that wouldn't get checked into a central location, but allows the more business side of things, the part of it that is contributing to a centralized knowledge base, will all get checked in. And then driving all of this, and this is probably the most interesting part in my opinion, is that I have a panel of experts that are using what are called subagents to help me guide through these conversations. So I effectively set up a bunch of people on my team that aren't actually people to help me talk these various things through based on their different skill sets. Council looks like this. We'll go through each of them in detail, but they are all experts in a few different either management frameworks, like ADKAR is a common change management framework, or systems thinking is an approach to change management and just business in general. That I did a lot of that in grad school, for instance, or lean change management. I'm also a forward deployed engineer, so if we get into the weeds and talking about specific kind of engineering, agentic coding tool sets and tactics, that's the AI agent that's supposed to be really good at that. And this is my counsel that I can consult and use to help me make decisions, help me think through problems, help me present the best foot forward with our client. The way I built this was with Claude Code. Claude Code is basically the same as Claude Desktop, what you would use, what most non-technical people would use. But if you're using Claude to generate code, you're typically using Claude Code in a CLI, which means you open up the command prompt and talk to it, kind of like an old DOS machine if you're not as technical. So I'll walk through a little bit of what I set up. There's a lot more to this than I can cover in 4 more minutes. So if anybody is interested in like diving in deeper, I'd be happy to talk through it. But the main pieces of what's important here is, we'll go through those 5 things here. First is the Claude MD setup. And so this, when you're in any kind of project in Claude Code, your Claude.md file is sort of your top level main directive of what is this thing and what's it supposed to do. And so that's where I define that you're a thinking partner. Your job is to help me work through all these problems with clients. This is also where you describe to it that you're going to have an expert council of subagents that you're going to use, and here's when and how you should work with them. If you can read the screen, it might be a little tough on the share. Part of this also has this always read context/framework.md. I actually took the write-up for what our framework is for delivering this service, and I put this in the project as well. So it's always referring back to how I said this service, this offering that we as Aries are offering, how it should run. So it's grounded in what we're trying to do pretty well. But the most important parts is it's setting up what that council does and how you interact with it. And then you set up individual markdown files for each of the sub-agents to basically just describe each one and what they do. So here's the forward deployed engineer one. You give it a persona, you give it a description of what its job is on the council, how it should talk, what information it should provide, etc. Each one has a different persona and different description depending on what its expertise area is. And then because of how you set up that Claude MD top level file, when you're just talking to Claude, you're just typing in the command line as usual, it effectively acts as an orchestrator. So when I say, here's the situation, I'm trying to figure out what the best way to advise so-and-so on this problem is, it will sometimes ask some clarifying questions, but once it has enough information, it will decide, okay, that sounds like the lean change management and the forward deployed engineer both have something interesting or useful to say here. And so it will go send that message to each of them to get their own advice. And then it will come back. I have it set to show me both of what the individual subagents say, and then it'll give me a consolidated sort of mashup of what that means from the council as a whole, so that I've effectively used this as my sort of like board of directors to talk to you about the problem, and it gives me an answer back. I can also address any of the subagents directly if I want to @tag them. And so if I just know I want to talk to the forward deployed engineer, I can just @tag FDE and ask it directly. That way I don't have to hope the orchestrator decides that's who I should talk to. And then there's also a file in here where I give it a little more directive about when and how that sort of multi-sub-agent conversation should go so that it's organized. And it's kind of cut off. This is a bigger prompt that I was able to put on a slide, but this is where it describes like, go ask the agents that are relevant. They should come back with a few points about what's important through their lens or their framework. And then you're going to list them all out as what each subagent said. And then you're going to consolidate it into like a finalized summary for me. And that's the output that I would read. Quickly with this, kind of what this can look like in the future, and if this continues to work well and I continue to want to scale this, a couple things that definitely should not do is give direct answers to action on. I actually prompt this very clearly, like, you're not going to give me the answer. That's not your job. I'm the consultant. I am the one who provides the answer. You're to be a thought partner, and you're to ask me probing questions. You're to help me see through different holes or different paths that I'm not seeing through, unless I specifically say you give me the answer. So it's designed or intended to make me better, not to replace me in the role of a consultant. It's also not supposed to communicate with anybody but me. I would not anticipate setting this up where we would have clients interacting with it directly in any way, shape, or form, or if that were ever to come to be, it's way far in the future for me to get my head around. Its job is to make me better, not to replace me, not to make decisions on my behalf. It's to help me make better decisions. What it could do in the future, and what I'd like to see it do, is act a little bit more independently. You can envision this being a more ambient, long-running agent that just like watches the inbox folder and kind of processes files as I drop them in there. And then sometimes goes, hey, I have an insight based on what you just said. Have you thought about this? Versus me having to ask it directly every single time for advice or for a question. One thing I'd also like to see it do is have a more comprehensive conversation with the subagents. Right now, I have it set up really simply where it's just sort of a linear orchestrator, ask this one, then consolidates. But if you make them behave more independently and run on separate sessions, you could actually have them debate with themselves a little bit in multiple turns before they come back with their consolidated answer. And I think that could provide some more interesting insights or ideas. I'd like to introduce new agents as well as needed. I did actually one time, I only started with 5 of those 7. And after I used this for a couple of weeks, I said, hey, based on the conversations we've been having, should we add anybody to the council? And after it suggested the forward deployed engineer and the metric specialist. And so I think that's something that could happen a little bit more automatically or organically. As we have multiple people running similar engagements with this tool set, and we have one consolidated knowledge base, what I'd like this to be able to do is borrow learnings from projects, like across projects. So it's giving advice, not just from the one project you're working on, but as we've accomplished goals or learned across multiple, kind of builds the swell of domain knowledge. I'd also like to ground the agents in more specific information. So I have for example, the Kotter framework agent set up to just whatever the model already knows about Kotter, which is fine, it's an old framework. It'll just use that. But ideally, you'd actually like to provide it specific context or a specific documentation and say, this is your grounded information to use. That way we can be a little bit more precise about what information or what context it's applying to the problem.